Welcome developers. Welcome to the very first video of our brand new channel. To start with the right foot, today I'm going to talk about the React Query library. A few weeks ago, I released a post on the Welcome Developer blog about this library. So in there, we explore with details how to implement React Query. We go from a basic to a more advanced level. So it's a fun journey. We do some exercise together. We learn how to implement this library. So I highly recommend you to have a look, and I reckon you could have a good time. Also, if you want to explore about all the possibilities when using Query, they have a very complete documentation with some code examples. They explain really well all the existing objects and comments, and definitely a great place to go. So today I prepare a pretty practical and cool exercise for us. So we will implement React Query to a basic React application following a practical approach. So you can hit the ground running and start managing cache on your React apps. So let's jump into VS Code and get started, guys. So here we have a pretty basic React application that I just created using Beach. Uh, the only thing different, we have Priya. For those of you that are not familiar with Priya, that's it's just a code formatting library. That, in my opinion, that goes hand in hand with any React application nowadays. That is very handy to ensure that everyone in your team is using the same code style when working on the same application. Uh, Back to React Query, let's just start by adding the library to our React application. Uh, right, so just while we wait, let's jump into our app component and get rid of all of these boilerplate code. I will replace everything by a my React app by a simple div. Great, so let's get rid of this state and all those imports above. Feel free to remove any file that we are not using anymore. So I'm just not going to do that so we can save some time. Uh, Great. So first thing that we need when using React Query, basically to perform two steps. First one is to create an instance of a query client. So we start by importing query client from React Query. That's what we need to create an instance of this query client. As you can see, you can pass some custom settings to this object. Just because this is just an introduction video, we are not gonna create any custom settings. We are gonna go with the default settings, which is good enough for us in this example. Right, so we have our client. Note that I'm creating the client outside the app component. And the reason for that is because I don't want to end up creating a new instance every time that this component, the app component, re-renders, because I want to use the same cache throughout the application. Great. So we are not yet ready to use the library. So what we still need to do is create a provider. So that will work in the same way as React context. So basically this provider that ever provide us a way to consume React Query inside in everywhere in our application that's wrapped by this provider. Feel free to wrap only the places that you want to use the library, the React Query library. In our case here, I'm gonna wrap everything. So let's start by importing client provider. Great. Let's just wrap here. Perfect. So as you can see, it's complaining because these expect to receive a query client instance, and that's what we just created above. Right, cool, all good now. I think now we are good to go. We can start actually fetching some real data. So for us today, I thought about using a pretty cool API. So that's called TV Maze. So from there we can consume some information about our favorite TV shows. So in my case, I'm a huge fan of a TV show called The Office. So that's gonna be my choice, and we can fed some information about seasons, episodes, and so on. So it looks good enough for our exercise today. Let's just create the component so we can present some data. So this is gonna be my episode summary component. And let's just create a simple component. Right, and that's for now, just a div. Let's run the app and make sure everything is working fine, that we didn't break anything. That's my app component. So what I'm gonna do is just to import the new component that I just created, and I want to run the app. Awesome, summary. So it's so far so good, guys. Right. So now, finally, is the time to start using the React Query library. So React Query library provides us with a query hook, and the name is useQuery. So this useQuery hook is responsible for fetching some data and storing the data on cache. And then it actually does a little bit more than just this, but I think today for a introduction video, that's what we need. Let's just import the query, use query hook, and just create an let's just request a query here. So as you can see, it expects at least two parameters. So the first one is a query key. So basically this query key, that's what React Query use to match the data that we are fetching from the API with the cache. So it must be unique in your application, and it's an array of objects. So you can use a string, a number, and even an object as a way to identify your cache data. So I'm gonna call this episodes. Second parameter, it's a function. So this function is responsible for fetching the data. So inside the function, feel free to fetch the data in any way that you want, or using any library of your preference. As long as the function returns a promise, React queries are good. So let's create a new function for this here. I'm gonna call the function fetch data. All right, so just create the function here, and that's gonna return fetch. So great, this fetch is that's the API URL that we want. So here, okay, so episodes, and that's gonna return the data in a JSON format. Cool, how good. Right, so let's say that we are not familiar with this query object and we have no idea about its format. One thing that we could do, guys, is to log this query object and we can see what is happening. Let's just open our DevTools here. Let's just clear the console and refresh. Cool. We have a few logs. It's all about the same query object. The difference is that we have the query object going from loading to a success status. If we expand, we can see that we have a data property. That's our API data. And we have some more properties just to help us handling the query status. There could be an error, or what's exactly the error message, or if the query is loading or it was successful. Right. So let's jump back into our code. So we saw that it's pretty straightforward, this object, right? But I think we can find a more professional way to explore every query that we are consuming than just console.log. So React Query provides us with a amazing developer tools that we can use. So that's just important. You guys will see what I'm talking about. So it's called React Query Dev Tools. So we can import from React Query, and that's going to be Dev Tools, guys. So let's just create this component. It must be inside the provider, of course. Cool. Let's just go back to NX. Let's close the console and let's just refresh. Great. So that's this React Query logo at the bottom. So if we expand, we can see all the information about the query. We can even see the data actually that this query is storing on cache for us. So in this case, we have more than 200 episodes from the office, and if we expand the first one, we can export the API format, the response format. Awesome. Great. So I think we are good to start presenting some data on our UI. Cool. So let's say that my response is not so fast, and then I need to present some loading information to the user, or in case I had some error, I want to present some error message. We can also handle this. So let's do this now. So if my query is loading, then I'm gonna return some loading message. Let's say that I had an error, so I would return something went wrong. And if my query was successful, we know that's the moment that we present data, but for now, let's just present this success, and let's just get rid of the summary. Awesome. If we go back and refresh, loading, then success. Cool. Instead of this success message, let's actually render a list. That's the place that we are going to present the data. So what we want to do is actually go to the data properties inside our query. We need to make sure that this object is defined. It's not new or undefined. And then we want to map. So we know that each record inside this data set is an episode. And for each episode, here we want to present a list item. Right? We need a key to identify this item. So that can be episode.id. And then we can present some information here. So let's go with episode, and then we can put what's the episode.name, and this is from season. So let's put here episode.season. Nice. Cool. Right. So right, we know that there's something here that's not quite right. And then it's because, look, we are using TypeScript and we are fetching the data, but we are actually not informing what's the data response format. The great thing about React Query that this was written using TypeScript. So it's ready to receive data types. So what was exactly the data type that we want to receive our data when fetching from the API? So let's create a simple interface, and that's gonna represent our episodes. And so we know by looking at our query that we have a ID, which is the number. We know that we have a name, the name of the episode, the string, and we have a, let's just season as well. If we go back here and export, just expand the data again on the query, we can see all the fields. And I think for now, just for us to present this, the ID, name, and season, I think this is enough. So cool. So Every time that I want to use this query, I expect the response to be an array of episodes. And error, I'm gonna use the JavaScript error format. Awesome. So TypeScript is happy now. This episode, I can even inform the type if I want to. So we have autocomplete, we have the intelligence now, which is great. Uh, right, so let's go back. Oh, perfect. So we have our data being properly presented on the UI, right? With all the episodes and all the seasons. So this is just a simple example, but I think you guys got the idea about how to implement these and how to start using a React query. Right. So that's all for today, developers. So thanks for following along with me. I hope you had a good time and learned something cool through this experience. So if you have any questions, just leave in the comments below, and I'll be super keen to reply. So take care and see you in the next video.